How do you find your voice in this noisy world? Good Monday morning! Welcome to episode 6, season 2. Arnie Manzano here, and I hope our time together inspires you to live more of the discipled life. Thanks for tuning in. We're available wherever you listen to your streaming audio. My guest for this episode is someone from my university days. We were org mates in our college and have become good friends. Shout out to Kuya Kaloy Novisteros and our UP Christmas friends who over the years, even our families have become friends too, despite the distance that separates us. She's an author, educator, and entrepreneur. I'm really proud of what she and her husband Goumang founded, Arrows Quivers Homeschool. However, a health issue last year almost caused her to lose her most important resource, her voice. Listen to how she rediscovered her voice, and now, more than ever, she is using it to instruct families and communities. Here's Miss Grace Gaston-Dousel.
Good Monday morning, Kuya Arnie.
Oh my, you spoiled the surprise already because I was about to say that you are my senior from the College of Mass Communications, UP Diliman, but now you spoiled the surprise. I am the senior.
Yes, you are. We used to be mistaken as brother and sister. Do you remember
Yes.
those days?
Yes.
I don't know why they think we're brother and sister. Can you see the resemblance? I think we
I
look like each
can
other.
see the resemblance, and
Yeah, you
you are, I
definitely look
think,
like
the beautiful version of myself.
we really definitely look like my older brother. That's why people think we're brother and sister when we were in college.
Okay, sige, i-push mo lang yung older. That's fine.
But we
But
are
thank
brother
you.
and sister in the Lord.
Yes,
That's for
yes.
real.
And thank you so much for joining me here in this podcast all the way from Davao.
Yes, it's a joy to be able to connect. If not for the
Yes.
pandemic, we would not know that we could do this, right? You're miles and miles away, and then we're here. So, I want to take this opportunity also to greet ako ang mga kaigsuonan diri sa Mindanao o sa Visayas. Maayong Lunes nga buntag sa inyong tanan, maayong Lunes nga buntag sa mga igsuon nato sa Singapore o sa tibuok nga mundo. Good Monday
Yes.
morning, everybody.
Oo. Salamat, Grace. I was about to say that you should greet everyone in your native tongue. And because this podcast is reaching actually all continents now, I have some listeners in South America. Last time I didn't have.
Oh, buenos
So,
dias.
yes. So, Grace, how have you been? How's life there in Davao?
Okay, it has been quite a challenging year. And then even the first quarter of this year was quite challenging for us on a personal note. Huge tasks lie before us. The pandemic opened up a lot of opportunities along with the crisis. Kasi 'di ba
Yes.
the Chinese character for crisis or for problem or danger is also the flip side is opportunity.
Yes.
So the pandemic was a crisis because of the lockdowns, especially in the educational sector, and that's my field. But it also opened up a lot of opportunities, especially for
Yes.
those of us advocating for home education, for homeschooling. So
Yes.
yeah, we've been very busy in a good sense.
Yeah. With great obstacles come great opportunities too. And that's one of the reasons why I invited you here to join us in this podcast is because you are an educator. Yes, our Bachelor's of Arts degree was in mass communications, you're a major in broadcasting, right?
Right, yeah, broadcast
Yeah, I was a major in
communication.
film.
Yes.
However, you also took up your master's.
Yes, my master's in education, also in UP Diliman. And at that time, my thought was, I'm going to take education because if I go for overseas work, I thought I was gonna be going cross-cultural work. I'm gonna go overseas, maybe work for a mission group or an NGO. So I wanted to do that as a teacher. So my background in communications helped me be a better teacher in the sense that I know how to communicate better to
Yes.
students.
Grace, because we came from Plaridel Hall, can I ask you a question? What made you choose Masscom? What made you take that as your choice?
Actually, trivia. I only applied and took an exam in UP Diliman, in UP. I did not apply for any other university after
Wow.
high school. And
So
I
talino
just,
talaga.
no, it's not even talino. It's not smarts. I just really prayed and I said, Lord, I'd love to study here. And this is the only place that I'd like to study in. I'll just leave it up to you. I don't know if that's, yeah, maybe it's faith. It is faith.
Yeah?
But others would look at it and say, ano ka ba? You should have, tried other. But if I had failed the UPCAT, there was no way I could enter into any other university. So it was really God's favor that I entered
Yes.
UP, considering that the course that I picked, which is broadcast communication, was a quota course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quota course yon. So, but what led me to take it up was because I wanted to become a lawyer. And I wanted
Yeah. Okay.
MASCOM to be
Pre-law.
my
Mm-hmm.
pre-law course.
Mm-hmm. Just like my
And
cousin.
that was my decision, my thoughts around those times. And then my father, actually, just before I submitted my UPCAT form, my father told me, why don't you take up education? Because I can see in you that you'll be a teacher. I told my father, because my dad is a pastor, and then he was like telling me, you have the gift to teach and to share knowledge to others. Why don't you take up education? I said, no, I don't like teaching because there's no money there.
Well, it's the practical side, right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
was, young and practical. But now look
Yeah.
at me, I'm a teacher.
Yes.
I ended
Yeah.
up taking education after all. So our fathers have wisdom.
Correct. Well, for me, if you would ask me why I take
Yeah, why did you
Masscom,
take up mass comm?
well, number one, I had a girlfriend that time, and she was going to Masscom too, so I just followed what she took on the formula.
That's not Anna, because you met Anna in Plaridel
Yes.
Hall
So I
already.
will not give a shout out to that ex girlfriend, but me, Anna, and her are good friends. If she gets to listen to this, she will know who she is.
But you know how God rearranges our lives, no?
Exactly.
He still aligns it to his grand purpose.
Exactly. That is what I was about to say, actually. That, now doing what you are doing there, educating, the homeschooling, and what I'm doing right now, isn't it amazing that God can really weave His good, pleasing, and perfect will for our lives so that we could, really fulfill
Agree.
the purposes that He has
And
placed
who
upon
would have
us.
thought that we will be on screen like this again?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And on the airwaves via
On the
streaming.
airwaves. Exactly. Agree. I so agree. Because when I started teaching, I turned my back to anything media. I didn't think I'll go back to anything that has to do with media, broadcast, or anything like that. But here we are.
Yes.
Little did I know that the reason why God allowed me to take both courses, in hindsight, now I just realized, no, is because number one, He wanted me to be my own children's educator.
Wow. Yeah.
And He called us to homeschool our children. We've been homeschooling our kids since 2012. Now, our eldest is grade 10. And then, Himig, your inaanak, is, is now
Yes.
grade 7. So, when we started, they were just in second grade and preschool. And until now, they're still being homeschooled. So I realized the training that I got was something that God placed in me to benefit my own children first. As we always say, our first ministry is our family, and
That's
our
correct. Yeah.
children our children are the first to benefit from the growth that God allows us to experience. So that's the first thing that I realized. And secondly, I realized that that training, both in communications and education, are now helping a lot of other families through the Arrows and Quivers Homeschool, which is a
Yes.
homeschool provider that my husband and I co-founded here in Davao City 2 years ago.
So tell us more about that, your motivation, starting Arrows and Quivers,
Mhm.
maybe a background of why that name and the mission behind that.
Right. Okay. So my husband and I used to travel a lot. So
Yes.
the first 5 years of our homeschooling, we were pretty much on the road. So I used to tell people, homeschooling is a misnomer for our family because we were never home and we're not really
Mm,
in a rigid setup like a school setup.
yeah.
So my children grew up in transport terminals. Our classroom was the world and their classmates were the children of the world. They were all over the
Yes.
place. And if you remember those years, whenever our flights would take us via
I would
Singapore,
remember that. Yes. We
we
would
would,
host you, or we would meet you at Changi. We
and
would
have,
host you at home. Yeah.
yes, and we miss those times because we are all locked down. And we were supposed to meet, remember, last year because we were
Yes.
gonna go via Singapore, and that was like a yearly thing for our family, going via Singapore. It's like the Changi Airport was like our second home. Our children know every nook and cranny of the airport. Imagine how many times we've been
We
there.
did meet 2019, right?
Yeah, that's right. That was the last
That was
time
the
we met.
last.
Yeah, and that was what happened. And then over time, we felt that the Lord was bringing us back home to Davao in particular, where we were first serving as a family here in Davao. And so the Lord brought us back home in 2016. And even before the lockdown, we started, replanting our roots back here in Davao. When we started regrowing our roots here, we felt, we wanted to also build a community of homeschoolers, be in connection with other homeschoolers here and all that. And then we
Mm-hmm.
said we wanted a place where, they can come freely. And because one of the things we lack down here is a good library, we said, okay, let's open our personal library, our family library. By this
Wow.
time is already, we have volumes and volumes of books that we felt other homeschooling families or other children can also benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, when families started coming and asking me, how do you homeschool? How can we start? So I started training parents
Right.
very informally at the beginning, started sharing with them my own experience and started helping them do goal setting and help them create and design their curriculum and essentially help them also get to know their children because homeschooling is really parenting.
Mm-hmm.
You're just adding the academics to the parenting
Yeah.
scenario. So it's nothing different from parenting. So if you're really passionate about you being a parent, homeschooling can come very naturally.
That's
So
true.
later on, we realized, some parents were saying, Teacher Grace, they started calling me Teacher Grace. I'm really a teacher by profession anyway. So Teacher Grace, why don't you set up a more structured support? So we started doing that. And then when the pandemic hit, there was a great need here in the Philippines to help families who are transitioning from
Yes.
a more traditional school
Setup.
environment,
Yeah.
yes, to a learn at home, learn from home, and
Yeah.
essentially a homeschool setup.
Yeah.
And so amazingly, in just such a short span of time, the Lord led us from being just a hub, a homeschool hub, to become a Department of Education accredited homeschool provider
Wow.
by giving us a partner school. So we have a partner school, and with them, we are providing homeschool services so that we could assist families. So yung community namin, which was only about 20 families on the first year, we're now about 60 plus families.
Wow. Well, before I ask you another question, Grace, I can hear some construction a while ago, and that's totally fine. That is what happened right now with the lockdown and in this pandemic. Our homes have become our offices, our schools, our gyms, our cafe. It has become everything. And I think the Lord really positioned you and prepared you for Arrows and Quivers. I love the name, but please tell us the story behind that.
Right. So the name Arrows and Quivers actually comes from the book of Psalms.
Can I make a guess which
Yeah, sige nga. Yes,
chapter?
go ahead. Go ahead. Which one?
Psalm 127. Am I correct?
Yes. What
Oh,
verses? Biglang nag-Bible quiz. What
that's the
verses?
one with that says, like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born into one's youth.
Very
Correct?
good.
Thank you, Teacher Grace.
Actually, yeah, we saw that, like we've always focused on the part that says like arrows in the hand of a warrior because we want our children to be sharp. We want them to hit their target in
Yes.
life. Normally, the target that we set, di ba? Parents
Mm-hmm.
usually are the ones
Mm-hmm.
setting the target. But Mang and I, my husband and I, as we were reflecting on it, we realized, we cannot just serve the arrows, the children. We have to reach the parents, the quivers.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
Why do we need the quivers? Because you see, the arrows cannot be sharp, the arrows cannot be straight if the quivers that house the arrows, diba? The quivers that shelter
Yes.
the arrows are in a bad shape. If the
Yeah.
quivers are tattered, if the quivers are worn out,
Worn
if
out.
the
Yeah. If the
quivers
quivers have
are
holes, they would
holes,
just,
yeah.
yeah.
So you need to also care for the quivers. That's why it's arrows and quivers. And so
I
even
love it.
in the services that we provide in Arrows and Quivers Homeschool, we have our arrows workshops and arrows center. We have an interest-led center for the arrows. But we also have what we call the Quivers Academy. And the
Wow.
Quivers Academy is really a series of home education equipping classes
Mm-hmm.
where we help parents understand what home education really is about. They get to reflect on their parenting styles. They get to set goals, not just for the homeschool per se, the academic side, but really a very holistic
Yeah.
approach to
In life.
educating their children about life.
Yes.
So very holistic yung education that we have in the Arrows and Quivers homeschool support system. So yeah, that's where the name comes from.
Thank you for sharing that, Grace. And you mentioned a while ago it was a challenging 2020. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
we all had that same challenge of COVID 19. However, you've also gone through a health issue. If it's okay, if you could tell us about that health issue that you've gone through.
Siguro I'll share with you briefly the timeline, okay? Because a lot of times when you are in a tunnel, you're going through a tunnel. What they say, the tunnel vision, right? You
Yes.
begin to really see what matters, and all you could see is the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Honestly, Arnie, I cannot say I'm out of the tunnel. I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the tunnel. And just giving you an idea of what
Okay.
2020 all through 2021 looks like for us, for me in particular. When the pandemic hit, we lost one of our businesses, which was a travel agency.
Yes.
That says everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that tells you where we were at or where we are at financially, for example. And then come 2020 November, the doctor found a cyst in my right thyroid, and it was big enough to cover almost in the entire right thyroid. So more than half of my right
Wow.
thyroid was already eaten up by the cyst. And so the doctor was actually worried that it might be cancerous. They
Mm-hmm.
ordered an immediate surgery for me. So I was face to face with that reality, entering the tunnel. And I thought I was just entering the tunnel. But in hindsight, I realized I had been in the tunnel and I just came to the point face to face with it when I had this health crisis. And I realized that even 3 years back, prior to the diagnosis, I was already going through depression. for 3 years, no, since 20, and I didn't know where exactly that was coming from. And now looking back, it was traced to my thyroid because the thyroid controls the hormones, no.
Yes.
So my doctor was saying it affected even that. That's why I suffered from depression prior to the diagnosis. So when they had my surgery, imagine you're financially hard up. You have to go through
Yes.
an immediate surgery, trusting the Lord to
Mm-hmm.
be able to manage. And then with the COVID issues, fees, especially here in the Philippines, fees were doubled because
Yes.
of COVID protocols and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized, anytime I can go, it's possible that I don't come out of the surgery alive also because I have lots of allergies. So my doctors had to study what
Oh,
kind of
wow.
anesthesia they need to, give me and so on and so forth. But the Lord is faithful. I came out alive, obviously. The cyst is benign, and I was simply
Praise God.
diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease. And my left thyroid is intact. And it was just in the nick of time that it was discovered because the cyst has grown to the point that it's starting to touch the vocal cords. It was starting to touch
Wow.
the trachea. It's starting to touch the nerve for breathing. So imagine, God's intervention. He's the God of the perfect timing for
Amen.
everything.
Yeah. You said you were in a tunnel, right? I heard
Mm.
this idea before that when you're in the tunnel, people say that, I mean, you're hoping to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that light could be the exit
Mm-hmm.
or a train that's approaching and about to hit you.
Yeah, that's true.
So, what were the things that were going through your mind as this health issue came in?
So when the cyst was taken out, yon, so everything is okay. And I remember lang, just to tell you the story, I remember lang how, as I was being wheeled into the OR, I had this somewhat of a conversation with the Lord. The question was, what if I lose my voice? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a teacher,
Yes.
and I'm like, okay, if I lose my voice, I am losing one of my main tools
Correct.
for work or for even for instructing my own children. So I just told the Lord, just before I was sedated, I just told the Lord, Lord, if I lose my voice, it's okay. It's going to be okay. You know what's best. I'll just yield to you. And the Lord just laid in my heart. It was so reassuring. But I felt like the Lord was impressing in my heart, even if you lose this voice, I'm going to give you a new one.
Wow.
And then I fell asleep na.
Comforting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I fell asleep. The next thing I knew, I was being awoken by the doctor. Surgery was finished. Then the following day, the doctor visited me, asked me, speak. And I spoke. And he said, is this your voice? And I'm like, yeah, and it's much better. I just cannot sing, Operatic singing
Okay.
is still out of the
Okay.
range. But I can speak. It's my real
Yeah.
voice. And so I knew, the Lord is telling me something. Another lease of life and voice, giving me a voice. So
Great.
yeah, that was one of my challenges last year.
Grace, thank you so much for sharing that story that now you have a new voice and a better sounding voice and you could be the next voice of Davao, the
Singing
voice of the
voice though.
Philippines. But you started this new project along those lines that now that you've regained or God has given you a new voice, you started this new channel called Grace Days. Tell us about that.
So what happened is the Grace Days channel that's now on YouTube, which you can actually access on YouTube now,
Yes.
was
So
not
search for
my
it in YouTube,
personal,
Grace Days.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. It wasn't a personal dream, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's the dream of our team at Arrows and Quivers. They have been encouraging me to go online, to to address people via a vlog or a podcast, share the insights that I've been sharing with our families here on a wider scale. So parang
Yes.
make it accessible to a wider audience. I had been hesitant because hard as it is to believe, I'm really not comfortable going out there. I'm more private and introverted than I seem.
Which is
Right?
really hard to believe.
Hard to
Yes.
believe, no? Oo, because we're trained eh. Naman, we were trained in mass communication, right? How to speak publicly and all that. And people
Yes.
think, she's so comfortable out there and all that. But truth be told, it was such a scary thing for me to do this vlog, to be in this channel. Because to do something like this requires vulnerability.
Yes.
The content that God wants me to put out there requires a certain level of authenticity to
Mm-hmm.
be able to put forth the message that God wants. And it's so scary, the responsibility that comes with it. But when I went through that health crisis and the Lord gave me a second lease of life,
Mm-hmm.
the Lord gave me my voice, the voice that I possess now, I knew that God wanted to do something. And I felt as I prayed about it, as I came out of the hospital, and during the time that I was recuperating and reflecting, I felt that the Lord was calling me to start and do the Grace Days channel. And the reason why it's called Grace Days, it's really about living these in light of grace.
Yes.
How each day of our lives can only be lived when you are living it within the grace of God. When God just pours out his favor, when he enables,
Yes.
when
Yeah.
his strength is perfected in your weakness.
That's true.
And so when I realized the reason why I was scared of doing the vlog was because I'm afraid to actually go out there and show you who I am. Kasi nga, I told you, I'm actually more private than I look like. I'm very protective of that and my family and all that. And then when I realized, I have to go out there and talk about things that really matter and things that are
Mm-hmm.
in my heart and that are weighing heavy in my heart, for example, that's exactly what God wanted. So that he can actually show forth who he is and
Yes.
what it means to live in grace days. So essentially, that's what the vlog is about. Incidentally, what happened was my first few episodes were all recorded in the hospital again, the same
I
hospital.
saw the first episode.
Yeah, it was in the same hospital where I had my surgery. And around that time, when I was recording, when we launched the vlog, when we were doing the vlog, I was in the same hospital because at that time, my mom was going through surgery also.
Oh wow.
She was having kidney and bladder issues and she had to go through surgery. And I was there face to face with another life threatening issue in the
Mm-hmm.
family. And the Lord was like telling me, okay, perfect timing, start working on the vlog. Because I was there the entire week. So that's where the entire first few episodes were recorded for the vlog. And a lot of the reflections that were coming to me at that time were again reflections that I was having as I walked through the tunnel. Like I told you, I'm not yet out of the tunnel. Soon after my surgery happened, my father had an accident. My mom then had
Oh.
this surgery. And then we lost our business nga, di ba, because of the pandemic. And then as the new year came in, we had two deaths in the family. So
Oh
how
wow.
can you imagine a life of walking in the tunnel and you can see, is it really a train coming your way to hit you or is it really the exit? And you know what, one thing I realized, Arnie, is this: you've got to also embrace the tunnel seasons in your life,
That's great.
because in that tunnel season, in the darkness of it, in the uncertainty of it, then you can be sure of God's presence. When you don't see anything, when you only see a pin light at the end, and that's your only certainty, and you know where that light is coming from. That light is coming from the very person who's right beside you.
Yeah.
walking with you through the tunnel. So I realized when you're going through a tunnel season, you don't run to the exit. You don't do that. You
Mm-hmm.
just walk through it and
Yes.
face the fear, face the uncertainty with the assurance that He who promised to you all these promises, He is faithful to
Yes.
fulfill every single promise, and He will hold your hand. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And you are going to be with me every step of the way, whether
Yeah.
I feel it or not. And so I'm still there. Huh? I'm not yet out. Even as I talk to you, I'm still experiencing grief because it was just a few weeks ago when we buried a cousin-in-law. And why am I able to speak to you? Grace days. We're just living
Yes.
each day by grace.
I'm praying for you and the rest of the family for
Thank
God's
you.
comfort and peace to reign in your hearts. And yes, you are right when you said grace is not just the unmerited favor of God, but also it's the enabling, it's the empowerment that we could walk through this tunnel, okay, and not stay there,
Mhm.
but walk through it because the God who is always with us, who promised He will never leave us nor forsake us, is taking us by the hand.
Yes.
As you were sharing also your story, Grace, I got reminded with this quote that says, we may not see God's hand at work at the
Mhm.
moment, but we can always trust His heart.
Yes.
So, Grace, thank you so much. As we're winding down our time together, I have a set of questions I call speed round,
Mhm.
and just give me your quick answers, okay? These are
Okay.
light-hearted, fun questions for you.
Like my age. Wag naman yun.
You're definitely older than me. Just kidding.
Not giving up, ah.
Okay. One new thing you've learned to do recently.
One new thing I've learned to do recently. On the top of my head, it's gardening.
Oh,
The
so you are
lockdown
a
taught me,
hashtag plantita also, huh?
yeah, plantita and halamama. Because
That's new. What's that? Short, sorry.
halamama, halaman mama, halamama.
Halamama. Okay.
Because I used to say that I didn't have a green thumb and whatever I touch dies. But over the span of time, I
Mm-hmm.
grew my garden and I felt like the Lord also answered my prayer to touch
Wow.
my hands.
Nice. Well, we are created in the image and likeness of God, and God is a gardener, so He has gifted you with that nature. What do you do to have a good start to the day?
Oh, that's a good question. I do my daily office. It's a kind of meditation that traces back from our faith fathers pa. So I just learned it recently, the term daily office, but I've been doing it na pala,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I wake up, I try my best no, to wake up before everyone else wakes up, quiet myself, spend a few moments in silence, read the portion of scripture, meditate, think through it,
Yes.
nothing academic, but just, ruminate
Yeah.
on it, let it sink in my heart, ask myself a poignant question about it, and then write my prayer regarding that,
Great.
and then spend time in silence again. And then that's it.
Sounds like how my wife would do it too.
I think wives and moms need that. We really need yung intentionally quieting ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because we have such crazy days.
And crazy husbands who are noisy.
Yes, true.
Grace, one lesson you would want to leave our listeners with.
You know what? Discouragement is a choice.
Wow.
We will always be disappointed. There's so many things that will come our way that will hit us, shock us, will catch us by surprise because we did not prepare for it and we get disappointed. And that's unavoidable because it's beyond our control. But our response to all of those is within our control, including becoming discouraged. And so we can choose not to be discouraged. we can choose not to be anxious. We can choose not to be fearful. We can choose not to be angry. But it's hard. It's hard work.
That's why
But,
we need grace.
yeah, discouragement is a choice. All we need to do sounds easy, but easier said than done. Just discipline our thoughts. Surrender it to the Lord every single moment.
Yeah.
Choose not to be discouraged.
Few months ago, when I was also going through some discouragement, and I wrote, to rejoice is a choice.
So true. So true. Especially now, because of the pandemic. There's so much that we can complain about and be discouraged about. But there are so many things also we can rejoice about and be thankful
Yes.
about.
And one thing that I'm so thankful for is spending this morning with you. So thank you so much, my dear sister,
Thank you,
Edmalyn,
Kuya Arnie.
Edmalyn, Grace,
Singing it.
Gaston-Dousel.
Thank you, Kuya Arnie.
Yeah, it's really a joy to be spending this morning with you.
Daghang salamat.
More of Grace's stories can be found on her Facebook page, Grace Days. You can also subscribe to her YouTube channel for her vlogs. For Grace, the possibility of her losing her voice drew her closer to God to hear His. That gave her full confidence to trust the Lord and His sovereignty, that God will be with her every step of the way. We may not understand what we're going through at a particular moment, but we're called to trust God's heart, that He is for us and not against us. To find our purpose and voice, we've got to listen and obey the most important voice, the voice of the Lord, which is sometimes still and small, is the most powerful voice of all. How do we hear and listen to it? James chapter 4 verse 8 says, "Move your heart closer and closer to God, and He will come even closer to you. But make sure you cleanse your life, you sinners, and keep your heart pure and stop doubting." I hope this episode was inspiring. Share it with others who need some encouraging. Follow us on Facebook for daily inspirational content. That's it for today. Have a good Monday morning and a blessed rest of the week.